The hospital froze when Hell's Angels leader walked in. Then they saw what he was carrying. The automatic doors of Valley Children's Hospital slid open with a soft whoosh, but the silence that followed was anything but soft. It was a heavy, suffocating quiet, the kind that falls over a room when fear takes hold by the throat. It was a rainy Tuesday evening, the kind of weather that made the fluorescent lights of the emergency waiting room feel even harsher. Nurses were charting, parents were whispering to crying children, and the usual hum of medical urgency filled the air. Then the atmosphere shifted instantly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Every head turned toward the entrance. Standing there, dripping wet and towering like a monolith, was a man who looked like he had walked straight out of a nightmare. His leather vest was patched with the insignia of the Hell's Angels, a symbol that commanded respect and terror in equal measure across the city. His beard was thick and matted with rain, his arms covered in tattoos that told stories of violence and survival. This was Wade Callaway, a leader of the local chapter, a man whose reputation preceded him by miles. Behind him stood Cody, another rider just as imposing, blocking the exit as if guarding a fortress. The hospital froze. A nurse dropped her clipboard. A father pulled his child closer, eyes wide with panic. In their minds, this wasn't a rescue. It was an invasion. They expected demands, threats, or perhaps a gang-related injury that would bring chaos to their sterile halls. But then they saw what Wade was carrying. Cradled against his massive leather-clad chest, wrapped carefully in his own kut to shield her from the cold rain, was a small girl. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Her name was Lily. She was trembling, her small face bruised and streaked with dirt, her eyes hollow with a trauma no child should ever know. Wade held her not with the grip of a criminal, but with the delicate tenderness of a father holding a newborn. His huge, calloused hands supported her back and head, ensuring she didn't jostle even an inch. "Help!" Wade's voice boomed, shattering the stunned silence. It wasn't a shout of aggression, it was a roar of desperation. "We need a doctor, now!" The spell broke. Dr. Sharon Whitfield, a pediatrician known for her calm demeanor in the face of chaos, rushed forward. She didn't look at the bikers' patches or their intimidating statures. She looked only at the child. "Bring her to Trauma 1, she ordered, her voice steady. As Wade followed the gurney, the staff parted like the Red Sea. He refused to let go of Lily's hand until she was on the examination table. When a nurse gently tried to guide him back, Wade stopped, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, his voice low and rumbling. "She woke up screaming when we picked her up. She needs to see someone she knows isn't going to hurt her." Dr. Whitfield began her examination, and the story slowly unraveled, piece by painful piece. Lily, between sobs, whispered that her stepmother, Donna, had dragged her out of the house in the middle of the night, driven her to a forgotten alley on the edge of town, and left her there with nothing but the clothes on her back. "She said I was bad," Lily cried, clutching the edge of Wade's leather vest which he had draped over her shoulders. "She said nobody would want me." The sight of the bruises on Lily's arms and legs confirmed what Wade and Cody had suspected when they found her huddled behind a dumpster, shivering in the puddles. Wade, a man who had seen the darkest corners of humanity, felt a rage burn in his chest hotter than any engine fire, but he swallowed it down. For Lily, he had to be the calm in the storm. For the next 3 hours, the waiting room remained under a strange spell. Wade and Cody sat in the plastic chairs, a stark contrast to the pastel colors of the children's ward. Other patients watched them from afar, whispers circulating about drug deals and gang wars. But those who watched closely saw something different. They saw Cody sharing his sandwich with a hungry teenager in the corner. They saw Wade patiently answering a young boy's questions about his motorcycle, his voice surprisingly gentle. They saw 2 men who instilled fear in grown adults sitting vigilantly, acting as guardians for a stranger's child. Margaret Olson from Child Protective Services arrived, her expression stern and professional. She interviewed Wade, expecting defensiveness. Instead, she got cooperation. Wade provided every detail of the alley, the time they found her, and the condition she was in. "We aren't heroes, ma'am," Wade told her, rubbing the back of his neck. "We just couldn't leave her there, that's all." While the investigation launched and the police were called to track down the stepmother, Margaret worked to locate Lily's biological father, Thomas Price. It turned out Donna had lied to Thomas, telling him that Lily was staying with relatives out of state while she went on a business trip. Thomas had been frantic, posting flyers and calling everyone he knew, unaware his daughter was abandoned in an alley. When Thomas finally burst through the ER doors, guided by a police officer, the scene was emotional. He fell to his knees beside Lily's bed, weeping as he hugged his daughter. Lily, seeing her father, finally let go of the tension she had been holding since the night began. She buried her face in his shoulder, safe at last. Through it all, Wade stood in the background, near the door. He watched the reunion with a mixture of relief and a profound, aching sadness. He knew his job was done. He signaled to Cody, and they began to move toward the exit. "Wait," Thomas called out, looking up from his daughter's bedside. He walked over to the massive biker, tears still streaming down his face. He extended a hand, then hesitated, unsure if the man would accept it. Wade looked at the hand, then at Thomas, and shook it firmly. "You saved her life," Thomas choked out. "I don't know how to thank you. You're an angel." Wade shook his head, a faint, rare smile touching his lips beneath the beard. "No, sir. Just a guy who knows what it feels like to be left behind. Make sure she knows she's loved. That's the only payment I need." With a final nod to Dr. Whitfield and a glance at Lily, who was now smiling sleepily at her father, Wade and Cody turned and walked out into the rainy night. The automatic doors slid shut behind them, sealing the warmth of the hospital away from the cold street. Inside, the staff and patients who had been terrified hours earlier stood in silent reflection. The monster they had feared had been the savior they needed. The man with the scary patches had shown more heart than anyone else in the building. Wade Callaway had walked in, causing the hospital to freeze in fear, but he left, having melted the ice around countless hearts. As the roar of their motorcycles faded into the distance, Dr. Whitfield turned to her staff. "Let this be a lesson," she said softly. "Never judge a book by its cover, and never assume you know someone's story until you've walked a mile in their boots or ridden a mile on their bike." In a world quick to label and condemn, kindness wears many faces. Sometimes it wears a suit, and sometimes it wears leather and rides a Harley, carrying the most precious cargo of all, hope. If you believe in kindness and second chances, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more emotional stories. Your support helps us spread hope to millions. Don't forget to tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. Let's see how far this story of compassion can travel. Thanks for watching.